All right, welcome everybody to today's webinar. I'm Steve Mahoney. I'm a mentor with the Greater Hartford chapter of SCORE. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Wendy Estela, who's going to be taking you through today's topic, how to find the right business attorney for you. Wendy, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for spending your lunchtime with us. I'm happy to talk to you about this topic. I am a business attorney. I've been an attorney for, it will be 25 years next year, which is just mind-boggling to me. And I talk to small businesses all the time. I mean, really, that's all the work I do is I work with small businesses starting out, kind of midstream and a little bit more mature. And really what I'm telling you is kind of common sense, but I hope I can answer questions about the other side of the table here when it comes to attorneys, in particular, fee agreements, ways to communicate with the attorney, ways to make sure that you're getting the most value from what they're billing you for. I can tell you this because as a partner in a law firm, I really look at every invoice I send out. I modify invoices if I don't think if the price is too high for what I've done. And we all have that ability to do that. So I think it's an important thing to shed some light on how lawyers work, in addition to just telling you how to pick them and how to make sure they're qualified. Because here's the fast forward here is that they're all qualified. So let me walk you through this. So basically, why do you need a business attorney? I'm sure those of you, especially in your first year of business, have figured out that you get a little nervous when you're about to get started, and you want to make sure that everything is right before you get started. It's very hard to get everything perfect before you get going. And I'm sure many of you have found that you started before you had all your ducks in a row, and that's totally fine. But whenever you choose to engage an attorney, what you're doing is making sure that that attorney is going to help you minimize your legal risks. They're going to ensure compliance with laws and regulations. They're going to help you with your contracts and make sure that the contracts protect you, not just your business, but you as an individual. And remember, most of you have LLCs or different ways to protect yourself as an individual. The contract also helps with that. I tell my clients who are just starting out that when you start your business, you should be thinking about how you're going to end it. Meaning you're going to at some point sell it, close it, hand it over to your child, maybe, hand it over to your business partner. Those are things you should be thinking about at the very beginning of starting your business that I'd say many business people don't think about. And your attorney should really be coaching you to think that way as well. And the most important reason that you need an attorney is so that you can focus on what it is that you do best, which is run your business. It's to do what you want to be doing and not to be worrying about finding a template or, filing your LLC or making sure you've complied with this Corporate Transparency Act, which is brand new and everybody's calling us about. You want to move that stuff off your plate and outsource it to the people who can do it efficiently. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. So also when you hire an attorney, I would say the most important thing, aside from fees, okay, which we will get to and we'll spend a lot of time with, is the importance of the relationship. So just remember, I always tell people this, when you hire an attorney, that person, that lawyer is working for you. It is not the other way around where you have to listen to what your lawyer says and just do what they tell you. It's a two-way street. And I think that the way that attorneys are portrayed on TV is that, my lawyer's making me do this, whatever. We're advising you. Ultimately, you're the decision maker for your business. You're making the business decision. So I often find myself telling my clients that, hey, I'm going to show you the whole world of the risk involved with what you're doing, but you may have to make a decision that is against what I'm recommending, and that's your business decision. So that back and forth relationship with the attorney where you can actually have a dialogue is very important. I make an effort to make sure my clients can speak with me and they're not afraid of me, because I feel like prior to becoming an attorney, my impression was that these attorneys are people that tell you what you're doing wrong and they kind of talk down to you. I don't like that. I think it's critical that clients and attorneys have a good relationship where they can feel comfortable talking to each other. So when you're looking for an attorney, find someone that you click with. It's like finding a friend or any other adult relationship. You want to find somebody that's the right fit for you. And it's not always the first person. It's not always the person that comes the most highly recommended. It's going to be something you figure out after you interview a few of them and you find the right person for you. So find the right fit for yourself. Make sure that you talk to your attorney when you're interviewing who you're choosing from. Ask them their communication style and preference. So for example, there are many attorneys that will ask you to call their paralegal instead of calling them directly. That's fine. It's just a different way of communicating than other lawyers who might say, here's my cell phone, call me anytime you want. I tend to say it's a mix of things. I'll say email is best for me. If I don't respond quick enough to email and it's a real emergency, here's my cell phone. Don't text me your legal problems in a text message. Please just say, hey, I've been trying to reach you. You seem busy today. Can we have a call? That's a great way for me to communicate with you and know, oh, hey, my client has a priority. They need me today. I'll call them when I have a chance, or I'll set up a time to talk today later in the day. They texted me. I know it's important. So for me, it's like email, a quick text message if they can't get me fast enough on email. Very rarely do I have my paralegal get involved. That's only really if I have them setting up a call for me for something, much greater, like a meeting or something like that. But the point is you need to understand how your attorney communicates. What's the best way to reach that attorney? Because one of the biggest complaints that people have about attorneys is they don't return phone calls, or they're too slow, or they're not communicating enough. So when you interview the lawyer that you might choose, figure out how you're going to speak to each other and communicate, because setting those expectations is going to be the key to success. Make sure your attorney is somebody that is going to take the time to learn your business. I personally, as a lawyer, that's my favorite part of this. I love being a helper. I love understanding what you do because you're so, creative, and you've taken risks to do what you love. And I love to be a little part of that. And I want to learn all about your business. But what's important about that, aside from having an attorney who enjoys it and loves hearing it, is that the attorney has to understand exactly what you're doing, because there's not like a one size fits all legal advice for all the businesses out there. What I tell my clients that are architects is going to be different than what I tell my clients that are nurses. So it's very important to understand the industry that you're serving as a lawyer. And so it's important that that lawyer take the time to hear and listen to you about your business. And finally, it's important that, especially with small businesses, the lawyer should really take a little time to get to know you, because as much as there's a push to have work-life balance and have a separation between work and home, in reality, especially for small business owners, your work is your life. There are very blurred lines there. And I find that I get to know my clients on a very personal level because their businesses are their passion. So there's a lot of, there are many intersections between business and work. And again, when you're planning towards the end of the business, what happens someday when you, God forbid, you have your estate plan, if you pass away, what happens to your business? Those things all are intertwined. So you can't escape it. You can't escape the intersection of business and personal. So make sure your attorney has an idea of who you are as a person and what matters to you on a personal level. So some services that attorneys provide, and I'm going to go through this quick because I think what you're going to care most about is the fee arrangements, but we'll talk about this. Attorneys can really do quite a bit. What we can't do is advise on tax matters unless you're a tax attorney. And we really don't make business decisions for you, like I said earlier. But the things that we can do are we can make your business function better. So one thing that I do a lot of is provide contracts to my clients. I work on service agreements. I know a lot of you are in the service industries. I will get a draft contract from a client, like they might have to sign something for one of their clients, and my client will say, can you review this and just bless it? Okay. And I'm like, what does that even mean? But I get asked that quite a bit, to bless a document. But what I will do is get a document, review it, find the areas that expose my client to risk that if everything went wrong, they'd be put out of business. I look for things like that. I also make sure to advise my clients on how to structure their contracts so that their cash flow is optimized, meaning I don't want my clients to be in a position where they have to go out and sue their clients for payment. I like my clients to be paid in advance, and that way it shifts the balance of power between the service provider and their client. So you and your client, when you're holding the money, you are going to most likely win the low dollar dispute. And I don't want you to be in a position where your contracts are setting you up to go to dispute resolution or court. I want you to be in a position where you're holding the money. And if there's a fight with the client, it's up to you to make a decision to give the money back to the client if there's an issue. So a good lawyer is going to not only give you good, strong contracts, they're going to create a contract that keeps you out of court and keeps you away from them. So the last thing, like I don't go to court, I don't do litigation, but my partners in my firm do litigation. And if I have to refer one of my business clients to my litigation partner, I feel like I've failed a little bit, because the last thing I want is for you to be spending your money on litigation attorneys who are way more expensive than business lawyers. So I really try to set up a contract so that it's protecting you as a shield and also a sword. So meaning it protects you from claims that are baseless or problematic, but you can also use it to fight if you have to be aggressive in a particular situation. You want to make sure that your lawyer has this kind of mindset, and that not only are they setting you up with the right documents, a good lawyer is going to spend the time educating you on the document and saying, yes, here's a template for you to use in your new business. Great. But let's take an hour and sit down and let me walk you through every section of this contract, because I want you, client, to have the tools to be able to understand what I just sent you and to be able to negotiate it with your client and to know why it's in there. Because if you're just hiring the lawyer to give you a document, then that's not what the money you're spending on a lawyer should be for. It should be our time and our educating you on those documents. The documents are the easy part for us. Educating you on what those mean and getting you equipped to, really advocate for yourself and your business is really what the attorney should be doing. So you want to find an attorney that has that mindset and has that demeanor that they want to spend that time with you. And you'll know very quickly. I think we've all met good lawyers and bad lawyers. So other services, we obviously can help with business formation and structure, paperwork, registrations, the Corporate Transparency Act, and things like you've heard of piercing the corporate veil. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure your personal assets are shielded from situations where your business might get in trouble. We can do all of that. Now, that being said, I get people who call me who will say, I want to start an online business. I want to be an Amazon seller and I want to sell, name your product. And I want to start with an LLC. I want to have a new LLC. Can you help me, Wendy? And I'll say, well, I can help you, but I'm the biggest advocate for self-help in some of these situations. And you've got SCORE here. You've got the SBA. You have a lot of resources to help you with some of the initial steps of setting up an LLC. A lawyer can always help you. But I would say before you hire a lawyer who, might be a reasonably priced one or somebody who's very expensive for these basic initial steps, look to see what the free resources are that are out there. Because especially if you're a solo business owner, a lot of these things, the initial steps at least, can be handled with the guidance of the SBA and other resources that are out there for free. That being said, I do want you to call me. Okay, I do. And there are times where it's more complicated. So if you have a partner or if you are, doing some sort of highly regulated business or anything that's like a little bit unusual, it may be a good time to talk to a lawyer. But even then, most lawyers that are good lawyers that are not hungry for business will actually spend a little time on a free consultation with you. And hopefully it would lead you again back to either the free resources or a flat rate price to do this type of thing, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. So other services, like we said, compliance and regulations, industry specific regulations are things that lawyers can help you with, ongoing compliance and advice, and avoiding fines and penalties. For this is a good example of this is I have a lot of licensed professionals that come to me that need advice. So electricians or nurses or anyone with a license that's issued by the state of Connecticut, they will say to me, I'm starting my LLC. What should I be worried about? And in those cases, I'm very much concerned about them protecting their license as well. So in addition to making sure you're protected with liability and your contract and all these things, I'm also making sure that there's no chance you're going to get a complaint against your license, and making sure that that is covered within all those documents on your website and all of those places. And obviously other industries have different regulations. I find typically that the client knows a lot about their industry before they go into it. And they're usually explaining it to me and then explaining a lot of the regulations that are very specific to the industry. But where we come in is that we get up to speed very quickly. We can help with research. We can help you when, sometimes you're working in multiple states, and that's something where we can help you comply with those regulations and laws of other states, even though you're operating here in Connecticut. So, there are things that we really can help with that you're not going to be able to find even if you talk to a lot of people in the same industry. You really do need the expertise of a lawyer who has at their disposal very strong research skills and tools available. Dispute resolution. Like I said, my goal as a business attorney is to keep you away from this. Okay. Now, not all disputes are avoidable. There's always going to be a difficult client. And you're going to be in a situation where you have to resolve a dispute with your client. What I have as a goal is to make sure that you are best poised for an outcome that is positive for you. And I try to stack the deck in your favor through all the things we talked about, the contract, the way that your website is set up, making sure that that cash flow is positive to you. And even down to the way that you would resolve a dispute. Do you want to go to court? Do you want to be in mediation? Do you want binding arbitration? If you have binding arbitration, which is basically a private resolution of dispute, what kind of arbitrator are you going to use? Is it going to be somebody who's well read in your industry, somebody who has demonstrated experience? That type of specificity is important. And this is where it goes back to making sure your attorney knows your industry. Your attorney is going to want to use that knowledge of your industry when drafting every provision of your agreements, including how disputes get resolved. So it's very important that this kind of global knowledge is there, and all the things I've touched upon, the relationship, the knowledge of the industry, they all come together when trying to figure out things like this, like how to get you out of a dispute. If you're in the dispute, how to resolve it swiftly. An attorney who's taken the time to get to know you is already more prepared than the other side's attorney, because you've got that good relationship. And that's really where you need to be when you're getting ready to resolve a dispute. So I'm sure there's some questions, but I'm going to try to hold them to the end because I only have a few more slides, and I really want to spend a little time talking about fee structures and kind of taking away the mystery of how attorneys bill. I think that I was telling Steve, I was looking for a joke ahead of time to start with you guys, but I couldn't even think of one. But I would think it would probably be along the lines of attorneys who just charge so much money for their services. And I think the reason there are so many jokes along those lines is because it's kind of a mystery, and there's a lack of transparency on how attorneys bill. So attorneys typically, what you usually hear is that there's hourly billing, and attorneys have to charge their time by an increment of an hour, which is true, the billable hour, okay? And we do have to track our time in many cases, and you can get a bill that breaks it down very granularly to see exactly what we did. That's sort of the default way, the hourly billing. But in a business setting where you have things that are like contract templates, all the things we just talked about, where it's like an actual deliverable that the attorney is providing, that attorney typically has the ability to give you a flat rate price on what they're doing for you. I personally love to do flat rate billing because I know that my client and I are not going to have any surprises when they get my bill. So, for example, setting up your LLC, creating your operating agreement, getting your EIN for you, and helping you with the Corporate Transparency Act, which is the new federal filing. Those things can be bundled together, and an attorney could give you just a price for that. And that's awesome because at that point, you don't have to worry that when you call your attorney that the clock is ticking and you're going to get some crazy bill. I always tell my clients that I am a chatter. I like to talk. I like to get to know my clients. I also don't want my client to worry that they're getting billed for the conversation we're going to have about my daughter's volleyball game and your son's soccer game. But those are the things that build the rapport between the client and the attorney. So when I have a flat rate client who I'm billing X amount for whatever contract or deliverable, I always tell them, like, it's going to take as much time or as little time as you need, but we're going to get it done. And built into that kind of unlimited time is the building of the relationship. And like I said, the small talk. So that's important. And those are also the ways that you start to build trust and the ways that you start to kind of impart knowledge about your business and industry to me as your lawyer. So I'm a huge proponent of flat fee, especially in the very beginning. Some other examples of things that I do on a flat fee basis and that you could probably get just about any attorney to do on a flat fee basis are a basic services agreement. I know a lot of you are in the services industry, independent contractor agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, an assignment of intellectual property agreement. Those are some things I'm just thinking of off the top of my head that can be done on a flat fee basis that are repeat documents that we get. I would go as far as to say even a non-solicit and non-compete agreement could be done on a flat rate. And even something like that, you've got the law that keeps changing about non-competes. Still, I would still argue that that could be something that's done on a flat fee basis. So think about it as a menu of things that your business attorney can do for you. Think about a menu. Here's the price tag for everything. I love that model because there's no surprise. Again, there's no secret as to what you're getting. And it just gives you this opportunity to have an open dialogue without worrying about the time. So really think about that. Contingency fee is these are your personal injury lawyers typically. So when you see these attorneys on TV who say, hey, there's no charge. If we lose, you don't get charged anything. That model is most typical for a personal injury case. So you're not going to see it so much in business. I have seen some creative fee agreements where there's a dispute and maybe there's some money to be collected and the client's trying to incentivize the lawyer. In that case, there might be an opportunity for contingency, but typically lawyers do need to get paid. The reason you see personal injury attorneys saying that there's no fees owed unless we win is because most of the time those attorneys are settling the cases with the insurance company for some amount and they know exactly what they're doing. And there's very few times that they're not getting paid. So they're only taking cases that have a pretty good likelihood of winning. So that's kind of an aside. Always ask the attorney about fee arrangements and what's called alternate fee arrangements, which are like the flat fee, because those will really shape your relationship. And again, one of the bigger areas of complaints besides poor communication is crazy billing. So I have a client who changed lawyers, which is another topic, right? How do I fire my lawyer? We'll put that aside for now. But basically, he fired his lawyer because the lawyer brought him into a mediation, and the dispute with his client was over, let's say, a $75,000 matter. And the lawyer brought the client into mediation, didn't fully explain what mediation is. And all mediation is a negotiation between the two parties that are in a dispute, but no one is picking a winner. It's a negotiation that is mediated by somebody in the middle, hoping to get a compromise. So my new client, right, he goes into this mediation for the $75,000 dispute, and the attorney didn't explain what the mediation was. He spent $30,000 preparing for the mediation, and then he spent 2 or 3 days at the mediation. And the bill came to my client, and he got a bill for $50,000 for a dispute that was $75,000 dispute. So this is an example of terrible communication by an attorney, the attorney not explaining the cost benefit analysis of whether or not that mediation should happen. I just view it as a completely neglectful handling of that client. And just like you'll see in the healthcare setting, if you're ever in the unfortunate situation to be in a hospital, you have to advocate for yourself. Even in an attorney situation, if you're getting into the place where you're spending a lot of money because of a dispute or something like that, you've got to advocate for yourself. You've got to ask your attorney a lot of questions, and you've got to ask for pure transparency and clarity on billing. And one other piece on that, and I promise I'll be quiet and move on, ask your attorney for a budget, ask them for estimated hours. So if they won't do flat fee and they won't do contingency and you're on a pure hourly basis, they may have asked you for a retainer up front. That's just like a down payment. But ask them, okay, you need a $3,000 retainer. Your hourly rate is $400 an hour. How many hours is it going to take to do my work that you're going to do for me? And they're going to give you a ballpark, but remember, they're not being held to it. But you want to ask for weekly updates, like how much time have you spent this week and what have you done? So those are things that you can do. You're not offending any attorney by doing that. And I know people that are afraid to ask those questions. You should not be afraid. One thing that I didn't write into this, but I kind of touched upon it earlier, is this power dynamic. Don't ever be afraid of your attorney. We work for you. We provide a service to you. And if your attorney like makes you fearful and you're afraid to ask them these questions, that is not the right fit. It's got to be somebody you're comfortable with. And you could say, hey, Wendy, why am I getting a bill for $5,000? I never get those questions because I make sure I don't want those questions. I don't want to send an invoice and live in fear for when my client's going to ask me these questions. I make sure there's complete transparency in what I'm doing, what they're going to get for the price. And some of these prices are expensive, but you know what? It's much cheaper to make an investment in yourself, in your business up front than wait and, try to cobble together some sort of legal documents for your business. And then you get sued. And now you're going to have like quadruple the bill of what that initial investment would be. And when you look at that investment and you say, I've got an attorney that's not just giving me the documents, they're not just giving me the templates, they're explaining it, they're educating me, and they're really partnering with me. That's the way to go. Don't scrimp up front and then, get hit with the big fee later because you're calling the attorney for the first time because you have a problem. Call them in advance, get some budget pricing, get your menu, tell them what the next 2 years look like for you. Tell them how the first time you're going to hire somebody, your first independent contractor, that's coming a year from now. Explain all that. And the attorney should be able to map out for you what it's going to look like in legal fees over the course of that year or two as your business grows. So a lot on this slide. I hope you'll have more questions, but I hope you'll have questions, not more. I'm asking myself the questions. We talked about the communication, and I think I already covered this. The one thing here that I didn't really say too much is the updates and the check-ins. It's very easy to get into a path of bad communication with your lawyer. So I would say, like I said early on, use the lawyer's paralegal. If you can't get your lawyer, the lawyer's not responding to you, check in with the paralegal. They're usually sitting outside of the office of the lawyer. So check in with the paralegal. See if the attorney will give you their cell phone. Don't abuse it. Just text them, hey, can we get on a quick call? Really as attorneys, we're handling many cases and it does get crazy sometimes. And I'd say for me, the biggest challenge is just that, is managing it all. Having staff here to help is wonderful because they can help me manage my calendar, but I do tell my clients, if I'm not responding fast enough, shoot me a text. So set that up, figure it out with your attorney, and that way you're going to have a much more productive, better relationship. So in conclusion, and I know it's 12:30, so 12:33, the biggest takeaway here is finding the right fit. Like beyond everything, it's finding the right person for you. I know, like, I still view myself as a kid of my parents, right? And if like my parents told me use this accountant or use this lawyer, that's who I was going to use, right? Because that's who they use, right? No, take time, figure out, don't just listen to somebody else because somebody else used this lawyer and it was good for them. Find the right one. Even if you meet an attorney who you really like and you have that initial conversation, take the time to meet a second one because it's either going to validate your feeling about the first one, or you're going to realize you can get the same exact thing for a much more reasonable price with a better turnaround time, and the person is just as qualified. I didn't really talk about expertise, like different expertise of attorneys, because I did sort of say that we're all qualified, but that's true. Lawyers aren't really allowed to have a quote specialty. Okay. This is a very limited thing through the ethical rules of the state of Connecticut. We don't specialize per se, but that being said, we do have practice areas that we tend to work in. So you do want to make sure that you are going to a real estate lawyer for a real estate closing and you're going to a business attorney for a business matter. Problems can arise and the bills can go up when you find an attorney who's trying to do business matters, but they're really a personal injury lawyer. So you want to ask that kind of question, like what kind of cases do you typically handle? Do you have other people in your firm that you can ask questions of if something comes up that is outside of what you normally handle? And one other thing, if you find a lawyer that you like, and for example, I don't handle workers' compensation. Okay. Don't handle workers' comp cases, but I will have clients who will call me and say, oh, my son had this issue. Do you know anyone that can help me? And I do, of course, all of us lawyers know other lawyers. So if you have a lawyer you really like for one thing, like maybe the person who wrote your will, they might be able to connect you with somebody who's a good business attorney because they've already now vetted that person. Still take the time to meet them, but don't just hire them because you got the name. But that's a step towards finding the right person. What it comes down to is it's on you to make sure it's the right fit for you. And all these other people can influence you and give you some leads, but you've got to ask the questions. And it's going to be a combination of the pricing, the gut instinct, the connection you have, and really that dynamic. That's the most important. So I don't have anything else to offer here because we don't have a ton of time. So I'm going to say, if you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. And I'm going to open it up right now for questions.
Thanks, Wendy. That was great. We do have a question that's come in, and if folks have other ones, go to the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you can type your question in, and we'll go through those with Wendy. A lot of what you talked about today resonated with me as I think through conversations I've had with my SCORE clients. A couple things. One was the concept of having an attorney focus on the tasks that either you don't have the time for or the expertise. It's a similar advice I give people about hiring an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's going to cost you some money, but if you think about it as an investment, that return on that investment is time and expertise that you can get back for that investment. It will cost you a little bit of money, but it does pay dividends. We did get a question from I think it's Kalia. It was during the topic during the section where you were talking about the topic of kind of a fee dispute with the person you said who decided to change attorneys. So I'm going to read this here. It says, I'm in this same situation now. I do not want them to retaliate against me. Every dispute they have taken off, and right now they've overbilled me over $500. He took it off, but I do not want to have any other issue moving forward because I think they might try to retaliate. What is the best way to handle this? I was told for all in-person billing questions, but there would be a charge, but this is not in the contract. So I guess this is a question of
Wow.
when you've reached this kind of stalemate or dispute, any advice you'd give? I understand you're not giving official legal advice on this
No,
webinar,
it's fine.
but just kind
Well,
of any advice on how to handle the conversation.
Well, first of all, the strongest way to counter a dispute over fees with your attorney is to take your file elsewhere. Okay. And you always can do that. It's not like you're locked in with them. If they were to ever retaliate, I don't have any more information on that comment, but if they were ever to retaliate against you, first of all, that's a major ethical breach. But there are ways to complain about that, not even within the firm, but through the state of Connecticut. Okay. That's like an extreme situation. You don't want to just be kind of complaining about lawyers unless it's serious, but we have ethical code. We have an ethical code we have to follow. And I can't think of a situation where I've seen an attorney retaliate against a client. Okay. But the strongest thing you can do is if you feel that you are repeatedly being ignored or overcharged or something like that, is just take your file and leave. And really that sends a message to them. And there's not much they can do about that. Even if you have like a personal injury case, I've seen situations where I've had like high school friends reach out to me because I'm the lawyer that they know, right? And they'll say, I've got this case and this guy's never getting back to me, or this woman. So just leave. And you actually go to the new attorney, and the new attorney will take care of it. And after that, the old attorney can't even reach out to you. So there are rules. So if you're in a really bad situation where you feel like you're getting ripped off, that's not an optimal situation. We're supposed to be your advocates. So
That's
that would
good.
be my guidance there.
Good advice. Wendy, what advice would you give people in terms of expectations for turnaround time? If they're
It
trying
really
to make,
depends.
yeah.
That's a tough one. It depends. I mean, it's really on us as attorneys to kind of set that. But unfortunately, because of our jobs, emergencies do come up all the time. So, I could have my best laid plans for the day and something comes up and now I'm off by a day. I try to talk to my client and let them know that that happened. But really it's hard. It's going to depend on the attorney. You have to specifically ask them. And really, you have to ask them that question. When can I expect this by? Now, if you have a true deadline, communicate that to your attorney and they will support it. I will have clients who are desperate to get a contract out to a new client because their client wants it by Monday and it's Friday. And I'll say, you know what? I personally love working under pressure. I don't mind. Like usually because I see so many contracts, I don't have a problem cranking that out over the weekend if I really know I'm helping my client. But this is something I didn't say, and it's important. A reason that you want an attorney, at least that initial relationship early on, is so you can have some influence over that turnaround time. So if you're calling me for the first time and you need the document tomorrow, it's probably not happening. And quite honestly, when we get those calls, it's almost a red flag on our end. Like, why is this so urgent? Okay, we sit back and have to say, is this some sort of scam? Is it like, as lawyers, we're business people too. Like, why do you need this tomorrow? Okay. If you're my client who I helped with, your LLC setup, your operating agreement, and a few initial contracts 3 years ago, and you're calling me back because you got this great opportunity, I remember you. And I can move faster because that foundation has been built. So another part of the investment that you talked about, Steve, and that I mentioned as well, is just that. You've got the attorney ready to go. And we remember, you aren't just a number. We remember you. So even if it's 5 years, I'll remember. And so you just get a little bit ahead of the line in that case. But if you're making your first introduction and it's a rush, you're going to be in a predicament. There's no question.
Yeah, so it sounds like to kind of reinforce two things you've talked about. One is, especially when you're first searching for an attorney, is to make sure you allow for enough kind of buffer time, right? For them to get to know your business and for them to understand the full scope of your issue. And the attorney may ask you questions that may generate other questions. And then really that open communication you talked about, right? Ensuring that
Yeah,
you're having that dialogue so that you're aware of everything that's going on with the business leader, the business owner.
for
We got
sure.
a question from Boris. How much can we trust AI with legal questions?
Ugh. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I love AI. Okay. I tell my clients to run things through AI. I took over a very busy legal department here. My firm's been around since the 60s, and the person who was running the department is retiring, and I'm taking over the business department, right? And I said, okay, the first course of business is I need all the paralegals and legal assistants to bring to me the best AI tools that are out there, because I got to know, because it's amazing. It's so powerful. I love it. And there's a time and a place for it. I think AI can walk you through a lot of things, right? So for example, if you're trying to figure out how to negotiate a contract, you could put the contract in there and say, give me 5 different scenarios. I've done that. It's amazing, the tools that it can give you, but it still doesn't replace the relationship. Like, I'm not in any way fearful that my job's going to become obsolete, because I'm telling you, even though this is all business, it's ultimately personal. And you could read an AI response, you could read it 10 different times, and you're never going to feel totally sure, because it's limited, right? So in the legal world, in the litigation side, remember, we're business, litigation, court, okay? There was an attorney that got sanctioned. They got penalized because they put some information in there and they got their brief written. And the brief referred to several cases, like the whole thing, like Harris v. Johnson or whatever. And they present it to the judge, and the judge is like, those aren't real cases. So AI will actually make up case names. So we had this discussion in my firm like last week about the tools, and this conversation, every time that we have a discussion about AI, that comes up, because it's an unsolved issue with AI. So I don't know. I mean, I think AI is helpful in things like this. I'll give one other example. I'll write a contract for a client for the services they're providing for their client. And I always tell my clients, I said, well, we all know that your client has this contract now, but what are the chances they're going to read it? Are they going to just sign it and move on and hire you? Or are they going to sit there and read it thoughtfully? And my clients will say, yeah, you're right. Most of our clients don't read their contracts. They just sign because they want to get started. Okay. So I'll say, why don't you take the contract we wrote and put it into AI and have AI generate a frequently asked questions page? That's a good use for AI. Okay, that's an excellent use for AI, because you could pay me to do it. I could write a frequently asked questions page, but use AI. You already know the contract's right. Use it for the ancillary documents and the ancillary stuff. Don't use it for your real legal, because it's not tested yet. And remember, it's not regulated. It could be anything. We don't know. I feel pretty confident when I play around with it, I can weed through what's right. But again, don't rely on it.
It's good. It's good advice. It's only as good as what's on the internet, right? Which can be as good.
Exactly. It's on the
Yeah.
internet.
So Michael has a question which you may have just answered, but he said as
Yeah.
a follow-up, what have you noticed that the best AI can get wrong on the legal side that only a lawyer could get right based on the current level of AI sophistication? When I hear that question, I think administrative type tasks like creating an FAQ versus
Yeah.
legal opinion type tasks, which
Well, I'll
are
tell you the
help me
other thing.
understand and interpret,
Yeah.
a legal case.
The other thing is this, and this is also what you pay a lawyer for. Tell me what I don't know, right? So you can say draft a distribution agreement. Okay. Draft a distribution agreement. And AI is like, here's a distribution agreement. All right. What are we distributing? Is this like, what is this? A distribution agreement, just the term that could be used in almost every industry. But the specifics are going to vary based on what you're doing, right? So AI doesn't know the industry specifics. Okay. And if I tell AI to draft a contract for me, it will draft a contract, but I will have to tell it, put in a provision for this, put in a provision for that. So I can use AI differently than you can, because I know what needs to be in there. I have found that if you just it's all about the prompts with AI. Like, you can go into Chat GPT and create some amazing stuff, but if you don't know what to tell it to do, it can't do it. So that's the challenge. And that's being very real, because law firms are using it. Okay. And I don't think that there's an ethical issue there. I think that if your attorney is somebody who actually knows what they're doing, they're going to know how to use it the right way. So for me, this is an example of how I would use it. I might take a contract provision I've written and put it in AI and say, rewrite this so it has a softer tone. Okay. But I'm not going to say, tell me what it should say. So see what I mean? It's things like that, but you cannot rely on it for legal advice. That's like lawyers are saying that too. And believe me, these lawyers with the hourly and wanting to bill you, don't you think that every lawyer wants to be using it and, quadrupling their billing? Yes, they do. But it's not fully tested yet and it's unregulated. So just think about it that way.
Right, right. No,
Yeah.
that's helpful. Hey, going back to something you said early on, you talked about how if you were a tax attorney, you could give some tax advice, but if you're not, you really can't give that kind of advice. One of the things I'm thinking about is sometimes clients are thinking through their legal structure or maybe a contract structure, and some of these aspects both have legal and tax implications. So would it be all right for you to say, for a client of yours to say, my accountant's telling me this, you're telling me this. Can your accountant and attorney talk to each other to try to hash out
Yes,
advice? Is that something you've seen?
absolutely. That's a common conversation. So I find that in my experience, most people that are like, say, setting up an LLC, like an S corp or just straight LLC, they are getting that guidance from their accountant. So they'll call me, they're like, my accountant told me I should be an S corp. I'm like, good, I'm glad you had the conversation with them because they see your numbers. They're making that decision. And that's ultimately a tax election. It has nothing really to do with how I'm setting it up for you. Um, Things like that. I mean, another time that there'll be some interaction, I've had clients who want to set up like equity or profit sharing type mechanisms with their clients. And those are also tricky because, I mean, with their employees, excuse me. It's tricky because they want to avoid creating a tax burden for their employee. So again, I know the different structures, but I don't know the details of how those people are compensated, their overall compensation. That's usually a joint effort between the attorney and the accountant, and there's some conversations there. Or I'll have clients who are in retail and they need to get a the resale certificate from the state because they're wholesalers. And again, the accountant usually does that part of it, although there's pieces of it that kind of flow into the contract or the legal stuff. But it's really typically the accountant, but usually the accountant and the lawyer have a decent connection.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. We're all
I'm
part of
gonna,
your team, like really,
right,
like you have to view it like, I didn't say this, but there's so many things I could say, right? But in the beginning, when you are starting your business, you want to assemble your team and you want the accountant, the lawyer, whatever you're doing for marketing or your website, you want that person, you want your insurance broker. That group is really going to be critical and you don't need them all the time, but you want to identify them. And even
right.
if you meet them, you meet with a lawyer one time just to kind of line them up. That's good. One hour consultation, pay for an hour consultation and say, when I need you, I'm going to need you. And most lawyers will either do a free, like we do like a 20-minute free consultation. An hour would be like an hour of our time. But that's very valuable because now you've laid the groundwork, even as simple as 1 hour. And also those insurance brokers are great. Like that, they're like little side lawyers in my mind because they identify a lot of risk and just line them all up. Like you're the captain of the team and you're assembling the team. Pick your best players and have them ready. That's how you have to look at it.
Yeah, it's great advice. A lot of times we talk to our clients and they're usually solopreneurs and they're going at it alone. And we say, well, you have advisors, right? You've got a score mentor, you've got an attorney, you've got an
Exactly.
accountant, you've got an insurance broker, you may have a banker. There's a lot of different people who can be part of your team and give you that advice. So that's good. That's good info
Banker
there.
is key too.
Yeah.
So a really quick little snippet. I have a bunch of interior designers as clients. It's just like one little segment. And there was an issue where one of their big manufacturers just completely went out of business. And these designers bought all this furniture on their debit cards. Okay. And now they're not getting delivered. Like $50,000 worth of sofas. Okay. If you could believe that, right? And they were like, Wendy, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. This is like, we don't know. So, we're brainstorming. And the solution ended up being many of the bankers were the helpers in that case. Like I view us as helpers, right? Believe it or not, even though it was debit card, the banks were able to, depending on the bank and the relationship with the business banker, they were able to reverse those charges on a debit card. I never thought that would be a solution, but the importance of the relationship with a bank. So what do we know? Typically small businesses, right? You're opening up your bank account. Great. I got my free, my $600 to open a business account and they gave me an incentive, right? You're not thinking beyond that, but that relationship can help you. So when you pick your bank, you want to meet with the business banker and interview them the same way. And you say, what if, what are your policies in the event I've got an issue and I've made a purchase? Like how far? So some of these banks, it was 90 days, some of them was 120. And that made a difference on, how far you could go back on a debit card, not a credit card, a debit. So just interesting, like the places you end up finding help are, from that team you've already assembled. The lawyer's one piece of it. And SCORE, of course, I forgot to mention SCORE, but that's a huge part of it because you have SBA right there. Tons of resources.
Right. We've got a few more questions. Before we get to the top of the hour, I did want to run a quick poll for folks. If you are interested in working with a SCORE mentor, speaking of SCORE, I'm going to put up a quick poll here. If you are, there's just 2 questions here. If you answer this question that you'd like to work with a SCORE mentor, I will send you an email on how to do that. That is the only email you will receive from me. You will not get bombarded. So don't worry about that. But if you're interested in doing that, let me know and I can send you some more information after the fact. So we got our next question in from MS, who is asking a question about using online templates to maybe draft up a service agreement or a contract, especially in the online services business, drafting it up themselves using these online services or templates and then running it by an attorney. What do you think about that?
I get that all the time. I think that's fine. I think it's great when it's something very industry specific. I just had somebody reach out to me with the same exact situation. I do think it can make it more cost effective when you're using the in-person lawyer, but I do think one thing I didn't mention, this is the reason, great question. If you are using an online template, okay, that template, you're clicking on something that says, I'm buying a template, we have no risk. That's it. This is just a template. Get it looked at by a local attorney. Okay. So yes, you know that when you're signing it and you're paying a cheaper price for that. So now you bring it to the attorney, the local attorney. If I'm looking at that for you, now my license and my professional liability insurance is on the line. So now if I screw something up in reviewing it, if I miss something or if I fail to put something really important in and it gets to the level of basically like malpractice, you can sue me for that. You can sue your lawyer because just like a doctor, I screwed up. And now you've got the deep pockets of my insurance, right? If you're buying a template online, you don't have that because they've cut that liability off. They've wiped their hands of it. So the benefit of going to the local attorney is twofold. It's number one, you do get a set of eyes on it for probably a lower price. And number two, you've got those deep pockets in case there's truly a screw up. So very important to remember, lawyers do make mistakes. And, I've seen it more in the litigation world, okay, but where a lawyer has failed to file a document on time and now they're being sued, okay, but legal malpractice is a real thing. And again, we're trained to look for all these negative things as lawyers, but you have to realize like that exists in the world. And as a business owner, you should be aware of what's the worst case scenario here. Template's wrong. Now what? Do I sue LegalZoom or do I go after this attorney that just, charged me and didn't even look at it? So definitely get it signed off.
Okay.
And be prepared for them to scrap it too and say, this is terrible.
Right.
So that's the risk there.
Yeah.
You're almost better. Most of these documents, I'm telling you, they're not that hard for us, so if you are looking at LegalZoom, call a law firm and ask if they have flat rate pricing for that same document. And you might be surprised. There's a lot that we could do for under $1,000, a lot. And remember on our end, I've got young lawyers I'm training. Okay. So when there are repetitive documents, I'm working with them, but I'll say, hey, can you take the first draft of this? I want you to work on this because I've got to train them. Okay. Those templates, you can even ask your lawyer, can you have somebody who's an associate work on it? That person might bill at $200 an hour instead of $425. that's how you have to be thinking about it, is there's got to be a bargain way. And it's just as good because there's a lawyer, like a senior lawyer overlooking it, but maybe the formatting of the document and the moving it around and the style is being done by the third year lawyer. So those are just different ways to kind of work within the system of the lawyers.
Yeah, I like the advice of at least just, making the phone call to say, hey, what would you charge for something like this? And just if it's on the margin in terms of how much it's going to cost you with using an attorney who's going to get to know you and get to know your business versus an online,
Absolutely. And
it's
listen, I tell people all the time, like, you're not paying me for the document. You're paying for access to me and my 25 years of all of these issues across industries and being able to look at it and within a minute, no, like that's a problem, that's a problem. And I could tell you the most important section of a contract in like a minute, just because I've seen so many of them. And LegalZoom's never going to synthesize it that way for you. They're never going to say, hey, if you negotiate this template with a client, whatever you do not get rid of the provision number 24. I mean, like, that's the benefit because we set you up. I don't want you coming back to me with every negotiation. I want you to, you're in my nest of baby birds and I want you to fly off and be successful. I don't want you to fall. I don't want the wing to break. So that's
right.
how we tend to set it up. And having the ability to ask those questions of your lawyers, it's very important because you will have questions and no one at LegalZoom is answering them,
Right. So Wendy,
not or
we
anywhere
got
else.
time for one more question if you're okay.
Yeah, of
We got a
course.
question from Michael who is in the research phase of looking for an attorney and basically trying to figure out, like, do I spend a lot of time, setting up introductory meetings and all this? Wants to know, are there I know you said attorneys don't really have specialties, but are there certain key questions you can ask? So in his example, he said he wants to make sure he's got an attorney who is familiar with a business that sells either across all the states or maybe does international transactions. Are there certain key questions you should be asking an attorney about your business when interviewing them? Or is it assumed that they're going to have kind of the same general business knowledge?
I would ask that specific question. I mean, that's because that's a tricky one, right? Like, you're never going to have an attorney that's admitted in 50 states. Okay. But you could say, have you worked across state lines? And that's so common. It's so common now with the world we're in. Okay. But definitely ask that. International, for sure. You want to ask if they have international experience because that's a different situation. And when I say there's no specialties, I mean, there are, but they're not. Okay, so you can have an attorney that only does IP, trademark, patent, whatever. That's all they're doing. Okay, that's not the attorney you want to pick to be your generalist. Okay. I do some trademarks. I don't think I'm a trademark expert, but I could do the basic trademarks. And I tell my clients, if this escalates or it's challenged, I'm going to refer you to this guy in Farmington. Like, this is how it is. And we, as generalists, we do a little bit of everything. And you really have to ask them because the way that, we can't go out there and just pick clients. Like, I can't just pick a client that is like you with, a multi-state business and international. So our experience kind of is built by our experience. It's just built client by client. So that's where the interviewing comes in. And you could say, if you don't have that experience, then, do you have someone you can refer me to? Oftentimes we'll get presented with potential clients that call. If it's not the right fit, we always send them out somewhere else because we don't want to get into the malpractice situation. So if the attorney says no, you can ask if there's someone you could refer me to. Or you could just start it that way. Say, I'm looking for an attorney that does XYZ in your email. If you don't provide that, can you refer me to someone who does? Chances are they will. We do it every day, every week here, refer around. So that's helpful. But again, just because you got the referral, you still have to interview because it's got to be the right fit for you. You do not want to be with a condescending jerk of a lawyer. And unfortunately, I feel like it's starting to phase out, but there's a lot of them out there. And I don't get it. Like, we're providing a service to the client that you're paying us a lot of money for. A lot of small business owners are afraid of their lawyers, which is crazy to me, but
Yeah,
it's real.
I'm hearing the big takeaway for me is to have a good balance of not just fees, but communication style, understanding of your business, trust, kind of that, can this person work for me? And do I trust them to be able to be an advocate for my business and give me the advice that I need? It's got all of those things have got to fit
It's
together.
all of it. It's all of it. And the other thing is there might be a situation, you might not find the lawyer that has that exact experience, but you then want to see, okay, who's smart enough to figure it out quickly and who's asking me the right questions. My pet peeve is when I explain something to, because we hire lawyers too. Like I'll have to hire a lawyer in my lifetime, right? Any expert that I'm hiring. If I have to say the same thing like 3 times and they ask me the same basic, wait, so you're this, you're that. Are you even listening? So pay attention to that, because if you're finding yourself kind of over explaining or re-explaining something, it's not the right fit. It's just like a friendship relationship. It's the same thing. Like you've got to know when it's expired. So, and there's a lot of reasons those things happen. They're either distracted, they're busy, they're not getting it. There's so many reasons.
Well, I remember your last bullet on that slide said trust your gut, which I think is a great way to
Yeah.
end this. So Wendy, I want to thank you very much for your time. Your contact info is up on the screen here. If folks would like to reach out to Wendy, this is how you can reach her. I want to thank everybody for joining today. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. And if you are interested in checking out more of what SCORE has to offer, you can do so at score.org. And you can find our other webinars at our YouTube page by going to YouTube and searching for SCORE Greater Hartford. And while you're there, if you subscribe to our channel, you'll be notified every time we put up a new webinar. Wendy, thank you again. Thanks everybody for joining.
My
Enjoy the
pleasure.
day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you all so much. Okay, bye.